I would look at them like, you're on drugs, man. This is only because people are scared to death that their children are going to die if they put them in a hotel. That's why they're not going to a resort.
How do you see what went wrong with the takeover of HomeAway VRBO into Expedia, and what did they do well?
I think the very first stupid thing that they did is...
You speak from my heart in many aspects, and especially the franchising model, which is something I spoke a lot publicly about lately as well.
And I think that experience, when you get a user and they have a bad experience, you've just poisoned that person for the industry, not just for your brand.
You are listening to STR Global Unlocked, brought to you by AJL Atelier, the show where I speak with the leaders shaping short-term rentals worldwide. I am Simon Lehmann, and after 2 decades buying, selling, advising, and investing, I've built a network that spans continents and categories. This podcast brings that network to you. Real conversations, global insight, no PR fluff. Let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to STR Global Unlocked. I'm Simon Lehmann, and today I have the privilege of speaking with someone who has been one of the most influential figures in my professional journey in the short-term rental industry and one of my biggest mentors in this industry. My guest is Carl Shepard, co-founder of HomeAway, the marketplace that helped define what the short-term rental industry would become. Together with Brian Sharples, Carl built and scaled HomeAway into a global force, ultimately leading to its $3.9 billion acquisition by Expedia in 2015. But beyond the boardroom, Carl and I also share something more personal. We both got sons named Jack. In my case, that's the J of AJL. It's a small connection, but one that makes our conversations feel more grounded and human. I happen to be in Carl's and Suzanne's dining room when my Jack was born in Switzerland while I was in Austin, Texas at a board meeting of HomeAway. So sometimes we call our Jack HomeAway Lehmann. Carl isn't just known for building HomeAway. He's also been a board member, investor, advisor, and one of the most candid voices in our space. If you have ever heard him on stage or read his posts, you know he doesn't sugarcoat things. And that's exactly why I wanted him on our podcast today. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the early days of HomeAway, how the OTA model evolved, what founders and investors are still getting wrong, and Carl's unfiltered view on where the short-term rental industry is headed next. Carl, it's a great honor to have you. Welcome to STR Global Unlocked.
Great to be here, Simon. Thanks for inviting me. If I could add one thing, it was Suzanne who sent you to Tiffany's to buy pearls before you got on an airplane to go back to Switzerland.
So absolutely. Thanks to your wife. And this is a story that never left us. And now 10 years later, Jack is now 10 and he's in good health despite the experience we've had in London. But you are totally right. It was that board meeting. I didn't get too much out of that since I was waiting to get onto the next plane. Right. And interesting enough, our son's birth was in the same date as Roger Federer's twins that were born in the same hospital in Zurich as well. So that actually brought us together as well. So that's a little anecdote, and we have lots to share. So great to have you, Carl. Let's get right into it. You don't need a lot of introduction here, Carl. You and I spent many conferences together. We even had red wine together on stage one afternoon, having a fireside chat. And I want to revisit some of these topics, especially from where you're originally coming from, like a Bain Accenture background, co-founding HomeAway. What pulled you in the short-term rental? And at the time, most people didn't even know the category existed, right?
Well, honestly, I don't think we really knew the category existed. The Accenture part of my life was at the very beginning, where I'd spent 25 years was in publishing, both in print and in online. So immediately before forming HomeAway, I was the chief operating officer of a company called Hoover's Online here in Austin, which was a company that gave business information, sold business information, primarily the salespeople, so that they could get their jobs done. But it was my first foray into online publishing as opposed to print. I won't go into Hoover's, but suffice it to say, we ran that company for about 3 years and sold it took it public, and then sold it to Dun & Bradstreet, where it continues to exist today as a premier provider of business information. I met Brian Sharples through Austin Ventures here in town, where I had decided that I was going to just sort of consult for a while. And my Jack was 5 years old, going into kindergarten, and my my oldest son Connor was 18 and heading off to Dartmouth. So I thought, with a child with special needs, I figured I was going to just sort of take time and make sure that I got Jack started in the right way. Did some consulting, and they set me up. Austin Ventures set me up with Brian. We went out to lunch. We talked about what he was interested in, because he had been brought in as a CEO in residence of that VC firm. And what he was interested in, he had started a company that competed with Steve Case's company, Exclusive Resorts. And he had done all the market research behind it, and hadn't been able to get it really going because that category was not growing as fast as he thought it was going to be growing. But it was intriguing because he loved it, and he loved the vacation rental industry. And that's because both of us liked traveling that way, and both of us knew how hard it was. I said to Brian, why don't we see what we can do in vacation rentals? It's an information business. What you need when you're renting a vacation rental is a lot of information. Where is it? Who are the owners? Is it furnished? All that sort of stuff. I don't think people understand how hard it was in 1995, 1996 to rent a vacation rental. You had to call the Chamber of Commerce. You had to get a name of a person. They would put you in place. All that was hard. Neither his wife nor my wife would do that. So we both booked our own vacation rentals because we were intrigued by it. So we decided we'd try to do a vacation rental business. And we saw it, interestingly enough, we didn't see this as a travel company. We saw it as an information company where you needed information to make a decision. That led us to a business plan, which we wrote and presented to Austin Ventures, and they agreed to fund. And that we put out some feelers to do some things. Our business plan was to cover editorially the 50,000 most interesting vacation rentals in the world, and then let you book them directly through us if you wanted to do so. And my training from Hoover's told me I needed to have an answer even if I didn't have inventory in a location. So we went out to license the content of 4 companies here in the United States: VRBO, Cyber Rentals, A1 Vacations, and Great Rentals. They happened to be meeting in a place called Depot Bay, Oregon. We flew out to meet them. We made our presentation and asked if we could license their content. They'd never even heard of the concept of licensing the content. But each of them said, could we talk to you individually? So we did. We talked to them. And we'd go out in the yard and they'd say, yeah, my business is 5 years old, and we have top line revenue of about $6 million, and we have cash of $5 million. And we'd go, what? What are you talking about? These businesses were throwing off cash like crazy. And we talked to each of them, and each of them were just tired. Another story, but we can, if we have time, we can get into it. But they were just tired of doing this. And we met with them. We got in the car to drive back to the airport. Brian's driving down the highway. He pulls over on the shoulder and he says, Carl, let's just buy those guys. And that's how HomeAway got started. We decided in the car on the way back, we'd just buy them. So we went back to Austin Ventures and said, I know we had this plan, but we're really going to use your $50 million to buy these companies, and we're going to establish the largest online vacation rental company in the world. And 5 months later, we did.
That's incredible. And you probably didn't think that you're going to end up having a $3.9 billion exit with Expedia fast forward as well. And along the way, you guys pivoted quite a number of times because you were not transactional, not bookable. I remember the days when Brian was standing on stage at Focusrite in 2007, said, we're never going to make our inventory bookable because our homeowners want to decide who stays in their property. I think that has changed significantly. I remember that you called me when I was running Interhome and said, hey, we want to buy you because we can replace your marketing department. And then you realized that we were actually doing housekeeping and maintenance. And then I remember your statement saying, hey, we have 35% return on cash flow. We don't want to clean toilets. I remember that like it was yesterday when we were sitting at Zurich Airport together. And then there was an eye opener for you guys as well. But then along the way, you obviously built a business to fit the industry's needs while you adjusted quite a few times, right?
Right. But I think putting ourselves back in 2004 or 5, this industry was growing underneath everybody's radar. And how it was growing was the key to why it was under the radar. It wasn't growing professionally. It was growing because VRBO, for example, grew 12 years in a row at over 80% per year. And it was all individual homeowners who were renting their homes outside of the professional world.
Yeah.
So that growth is what we got a glimpse of. We still didn't think we were a travel company yet. I mean, we didn't figure out we were a travel company until about, I'd say 9-12 months into it, when we finally released HomeAway.com. And we realized that the calls we were getting were travel calls and not information calls, not about, can you give me more information about this house? It was, how do we book it? What do we do? We thought, oh, well, damn, we're a travel company. And we pivoted instantly, but I didn't even know how to spell travel. And I had to learn all that stuff. But I knew how to put information on a page or a virtual page, but I didn't know how to, and I sell advertising around it, but I didn't know how to book a property. And the truth was, people didn't want to have people book without direct contact with the guest. That didn't change until the ascension of Airbnb. And when their model, which was, at the time, totally different, of renting primary homes, none of those people had ways to be paid. So Airbnb had to create that. Our side of the industry, the traditional vacation rental, holiday rental industry in Europe, our side of the industry, all those folks had methods for being paid. You could wire them money. You could use a credit card. You could be paid. You could pay easily. And all we had to do was surface the way to pay them. We didn't have to actually be involved in the transaction. And that left them in total control of the guest experience from the moment the guest contacted them until the moment that they checked out. Our customers, our providers, our suppliers, if you will, had total control of the guest experience. You turn that over to Airbnb, which was growing. A person who rented his home part-time didn't want to control the guest experience. He didn't want to have the cash. He didn't have a way to hold the cash. He really just needed to get paid. So him getting a check once a month from Airbnb was perfect because he didn't have to have any bookkeeping and he didn't have to talk with these people until they showed up. And it just made the industry grow sort of in different directions for a few years until it came back together.
Yeah, absolutely. If you would start HomeAway today, what would be a lot harder and what might actually be easier given the state of the market?
I'm not sure that anybody, it's a great conceit of old people that they don't think you can do the same thing again that they did. So someone's going to do it. And I believe we can talk in a minute about what I think is going to happen in the next few years. But what enabled HomeAway to come out of the chute like it did, and you asked about our valuation at the end, Brian and I thought we were going into this, and when we get to be worth $500 million, we're selling. That was our thought. Well, we got offered $500 million about 9 months into HomeAway's life. And we sort of shut the door after he's going to be one of your guests in a few weeks. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but we shut the door when they left and went, holy shit, and we went to AV and said, this is what's happening. We've blown through our 5-year business plan in 18 months. We're getting these offers. There's no abatement to the growth we're seeing. We couldn't put a number on how many vacation rentals there were in the world because there just wasn't any data about that. All we knew is that every month we signed up even at our lowest growth year, 40% new listings. And we retained people. We did not churn out. We were retaining people at 80 and 90% year over year. So the growth was astronomical for us. That could not happen now because the industry is formed. It might happen in another industry that's forming. I think AI is probably going to bring us several of those. But at that point in time, when you had to go out and get somebody to list their property, put their pictures on, the process to put a listing on VRBO when we bought it took an hour and a half. Brian and I did it. We put our properties on VRBO just to see. It was nightmarish. We got that down eventually to like 3 minutes. But these were the things that you could do to tweak. But honestly, that was one thing. The second thing that couldn't happen today and may happen under AI, because there's a new world coming, is that we had SEO dominance everywhere. We quickly went to become the authority. So we were dominating SEO and it was all coming to us. It drove the professional property managers absolutely batshit that we were getting all the traffic and their websites could not beat us because we just had more authority under Google's algorithms than they did. That's not going to be repeated any soon. The other thing that happened that I think changed it is that we had happily a devil who came up at the time. And Airbnb was considered by every city in the country to be the devil, still is. And that put the focus on Airbnb, which let us be able to keep going out there and say, we're legal in every place we operate. The communities that we operate in embrace us. They want to have guests. They want to have travelers. You don't have to, we're legal. That was good because we had those guys out there running as a counterpoint. Now, long term, we discovered with Airbnb that even bad publicity is great publicity. So one of the things that fueled their growth was their antichrist attitude that was going on, that kept him in the print all the time. Young Mr. Chesky, God bless him, was in the press all the time. I think that continued to lift the boat, lift all the boats up, but it really drove our valuation and our growth. So those things that came together to grow HomeAway to be a $4 billion company in the short amount of time we were independent, they will be replicated again, but it'll be in a different industry, I think.
Yeah, I remember exceptionally well when Brian Sharples and I prepared for a fireside interview of Brian Chesky 2012 at the Focusrite conference in Florida. So that was an interesting experience waiting for Brian to come while Brian Sharples and I got ready for our stint and how we prepared. And I guess that's exactly where the differentiation was at the time as well. But let's fast forward. Let's get out of the past and let's talk about the OTA playbook then versus now. And, at the end of the day, you guys helped to pioneer the OTA model for vacation rentals, without doubt. Even though you were more a marketing platform to start with listings and then became transactional at a later stage. But what do you think, why OTAs still dominate distribution today? And where are the cracks starting to show? Where do you see that evolving now?
Well, I think did we ever consider ourselves an OTA? Not really, because we really were specialists in vacation rentals. All of our, you couldn't rent a plane, you couldn't rent a boat, You couldn't buy a train ticket. You couldn't, do the things that I think OTAs need to be able to do. So when you're a single subject, if you will, single category distributor, that's somewhat problematic. And I think that you are an OTA, and HomeAway under Expedia became more of an OTA. But I think the challenge is to be an OTA, you have to be very, very broad. And I believe that is something that enables them to continue to grow. If you're the first thing people think about every time they want to travel, you're going to win. Booking has certainly won that war. And you compare the valuation and the usership of Booking to everybody else, Expedia included, and Airbnb included, you can see who the dominant OTA in the world truly is. And it's not a single category OTA. So I think that's one of the challenges. Not knowing what you are and not maximizing there is a challenge for companies. I'm on the board of a company called Hostel World, and it's a single subject OTA. It's very good if you want to rent a hostel. It's not so good if you're looking for a boutique hotel, right? So you've got to, your audience is segregated even before they started. Where I think the vacation rental industry grew was in the early days, and continued to grow through the consolidation of the OTAs, is that people who wanted a vacation rental went someplace to get it. They did not go to booking.com, and they did not go to Expedia, which is why eventually Expedia bought us. They knew they weren't going to be able to get that inventory any other way. And I gave them my sage advice, which they promptly discounted, which was, you should not intermingle this inventory. You should cross-sell it, but you shouldn't intermingle it, because a person looking for a hotel room is going to be, why are you showing me a 3-bedroom condo where I have to pay by the weekend? What is this? Why do I care about that? So the explanation of it was difficult. Now, over the years, people understood what a vacation rental is, and let's explore that in a minute, because the definition of vacation rental truly has been dumbed down over the last 10 years to where it basically is a cookie cutter hotel room. They all look the same, especially by the major players. They all hire these tacky Wayfair-oriented designers who put the same crap in the houses with the same fast furniture, the pictures that fall off the wall. They do that sort of stuff now that really took away from the fact that vacation rentals used to be very, very unique. They ain't unique anymore. That's a challenge for selling them, because now you're selling something that's not unique. I think as the industry evolved, the growth slowed. You had that little bump in COVID, which really messed everybody up as far as the industry is concerned. I don't know about you, Simon, but when people would come to me in 20 and 21 and tell me that this industry is on fire and this is going to grow forever, I would look at them like, you're on drugs, man. This is only because people are scared to death that their children are going to die if they put them in a hotel. That's why they're not going to a resort. It isn't because suddenly they decided that a vacation rental or an RV is the way to travel. It's that they don't want to die. That's a different sort of thing. But a lot of investment was made during those years. A lot of stupid investment was made during those years. A lot of oversupply happened in those years. A lot of people who shouldn't be in hospitality started in those years. And that pig is not through the snake yet, as my experience over the last 4 days sort of showed me.
Oh, wow. We're going to explore that together. And that's a very valid point you're putting out there. And we'll talk about the industry in a second. Just one last question in relation to the takeover as well of Expedia. You alluded a little bit to it. How do you see what went wrong with the takeover of HomeAway VRBO into Expedia, and what did they do well?
Oh, I think I'll give you my personal opinion, and I always preface this with, they paid $4 billion. They can do whatever they want.
Fair enough.
So let's go there. I think the very first stupid thing that they did is change the name to Vrbo. And that's not because I am conceited and I think HomeAway's a better name. It is only that they spent hundreds of millions of dollars changing that name, trying to get people to say Vrbo versus VRBO. And that was, to me, money that could have been invested better in improving the category, improving the technology, really marketing. If $200 million in marketing would have been a really good thing to spend on something other than, say, Vrbo. That's number one. Number two was this need to consolidate the platforms that Expedia has as its core DNA to drive technology costs down. Well, it's a different platform. It is a different, when you're trying to sell a vacation rental, there's a lot more questions than just, is the room available? Is it a double king? Is it is it a twin? Does it have a view of the pool? There's a lot more information that people need. And you need to really determine what people want before they start searching for it so you can give it to them. That's something that I think that neither Booking nor Expedia does well, because they've intermingled the category. Booking just has so many more people coming that they can make a lot more bad technology decisions than Expedia could.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Airbnb still dominates this conversation when you talk about short-term rentals, is that we changed the name from vacation rental to short-term rental. And then we changed it even further to an Airbnb, which was brilliant on the part of Chesky. And I think even Chesky, if you get him on, ask him, I don't think he knew he was going to become Kleenex.
No, absolutely not. And yes, I'm dying to get Jesky on my podcast as well and have this conversation. And that's something what we're talking about in the professional world all the time. We've become the Airbnb industry and we become glorified cleaners. And that's a massive challenge to many of us. But also, I have to say, because people have not understood yet what the opportunities are in relation to distribution as well. I mean, you do not build a property management company on a single track distribution channel. That's just not going to happen. And I think that does not create the value that you need for your homeowners and drive occupancy and a diverse customer profile to come and stay with you. And I think that's something that we see significantly different on a global basis when you look at Australia or Southeast Asia and the way distribution is done in Europe and the United States, where United States is so much more consolidated in relation to demand generation than what the Europe is. I mean, every average European property manager uses at least 10 channels, if not more, through Channel Manager or through the PMS to really spread the distribution and the demand across as many channels as you can, plus driving your own direct bookings as well. So there's no question that this will potentially change as well. And we know as well that Booking.com will not leave the US market without giving it a real go at it. And they're creating more market share already, even in small numbers, but they will not let this market go untapped without a doubt. And now this is an interesting segue to a quick conversation about the fee structure of OTAs, let's call them platforms or distribution. And Airbnb has just, and you've made a very interesting quote on LinkedIn, which I really liked, and also on the Skift article just recently, to say, hey, this is the goodbye of the community aspect of Airbnb. Now we're changing the commission model, so hosts pay it all. Rates will increase because hosts don't want to carry all the inflated distribution commission. How do you view that? And so what's your view on this Airbnb fee structure change? And the second question adjoined to that is, does that mean now this is a free card for Booking and Expedia to raise their commissions?
Well, the thing I spent years trying to tell the professional managers around the world that Airbnb really did charge 18%, and they needed to understand that.
Yes.
And they would all look at me like, Carl, you're just wrong. I have to pay the credit card fees anyway, and they only charge me the credit card fees. And I'd say, no, dude, A market price is established by what a willing buyer will pay a willing seller. And the willing buyer is willing to pay you 15% more than you're getting. So therefore, you could, if you have $100 a night booking and you're netting only the 85, that's the same thing that would happen than if that's happening to you right now. You're only netting the 85 less your 3%. So you're really paying 18%. No, you're not. So the point that I've tried to make to folks is that Airbnb didn't change its fee structure. It just shifted the fee to the host. And why? I think that this is something I feel personally vindicated on. There is not another marketplace or OTA in the world that charges the traveler. That was just always, to me, dumb as hell to charge the traveler. I fought it at HomeAway. I wouldn't let it happen while I was there. And when I left, I knew it was going to happen. I knew Expedia couldn't not do that. But the point is, it is a cul-de-sac. It was a drug that was driving growth of supply because supply was too stupid, in my opinion, to see that they were leaving 15% on the table. Well, now we've made that all legit. So that's the first thing. The fees are all legit. The supplier should pay for the booking. Now, can the supplier afford 15%? Yeah, they can afford 15%. Will there be pain in the next couple of years as prices adjust? Prices are going to have to adjust up because behind professional property managers, there is an owner. And that owner owns the house, and the owner wants it booked for as much money as he can possibly get. And you can't tell your owner that you're going to give him 15% less now because suddenly you can still only charge $100 a night, but now you have to, on Airbnb bookings, only net 82. So that's going to be a challenge for the professional managers because owners are going to be looking to maximize their revenue. For the private host on Airbnb, this is about to be a game changer. Now, think about Airbnb's fees right now. It is not logical, Simon, that you can say to a traveler, a guest who is on Airbnb, here's one price for a house that is you pay a 15% fee for. It's private. And here's a fee for a house that's very similar that you only pay nothing for. So how do you explain that to travelers? Of course, Airbnb is going to have to charge the 15% to the individual host. That's coming. Now we get to the real crux of the matter, which is the host just can't afford it because they have built their whole lives around that fee structure. Yep. And they are not professional property managers. Some of them are, but the vast majority of Airbnb's inventory is still not professionally managed. That's going to be a very big problem for those folks. So we'll see some industry shakeout there. Fees themselves, I think now that Airbnb has entered the official world where you charge the traveler, I think the Expedia is going to have to respond because they can't continue. I mean, now they are on the other side of it. I always wanted to market HomeAway as it's free to you. You can book anything you want. It's totally free to you. And for whatever reason, our marketing people thought that was a bad idea. I should have fired the marketing people, but that was their approach. That's what's going to be happening. It's going to be what's free to you. You know, we have little competitors coming up in this industry right now, small guys who the industry should be supporting, where it's free to the traveler and it's also low cost to the supplier. And why is that? Because people who understand this industry know we aren't hotels. You don't have a tipping point like you do in a 400-room hotel that once you're over 70% occupied, everything's falling to your bottom line. We don't have that model. Every one of our properties is individually. You need to book it in order for that host, that owner, to make money. that is really putting pressure on those margins. And at the same time, we still have this overhang of huge amounts of inventory, good, bad, or indifferent from COVID, when people just thought, oh, I'll have a side hustle on Airbnb and I'll put 50 houses up. I don't know how to change a sheet, but that's okay. I'm going to put those 50 houses up. And I'm going to charge just 10% over what I pay for my rent. Those guys are going to have some trouble. But I think we'll see some industry shakeout, but at least everyone's level now, and we're all paying fees. Now, what are those fees going to be? In my opinion, I think you're going to see fees on professionals go up over the next several years because they have to. These technology costs only get higher. Everybody's public. Everybody's got to make year-over-year growth. Everyone's got to support that stock price. And as inventory declines or consolidates, let's not say decline, let's just say that as inventory that shouldn't be there goes away, you're going to see it harder to do anything but raise prices. So in my view, you're going to see people have to raise prices across the OTA universe in the next 2 years.
Yeah, that's incredible. And then what else? I mean, obviously what you've mentioned in terms of the commissions and the owners looking at maximizing their returns as well. So we're going to see a lot of shifts as well because people are getting insecure the margin. So that puts another margin compression on the professional side of the industry. So they need to find different ways in how they can build into any additional margins they can get while the market gets more competitive in relation to distribution fees as well. So this is going to be extremely hard. It's not the death of professional property management at all, because you will have some shakeout in the long tail as well. But at the end, the distribution piece is definitely going to be the big question. And is there other models? I'm looking forward to have Eric on my podcast as well and talk to the founder of Savvy and other platforms who bring alternatives in relation to distribution to this industry. And then there is others. AI will significantly change the way we do search, and the way we find properties will also be a challenge in how OTAs deal with that or platforms deal with that. So that's definitely going to remain super interesting. And you and I could talk a lot more about this topic, but I want to tackle now the hardcore property management industry a little bit further with you and talk about the blind spots as well. You know, you've been investors in different platforms. You've been involved with Turnkey. You've been involved with Edge Retreats and many others. You saw Vacasa on the sideline. What do you think founders and investors, for the things you have seen in your career, still get wrong about the short-term rental industry?
Oh, well, I think we're finally beginning to see some people do it right. I think it is very difficult. Interhome, I always thought that you lived in a rarefied air when you were in Europe with Interhome, because you had a world that was very, the countries are so consolidated, they're so small, and you can get across them very quickly. And they're really like the United States now, more than they are, they are all independent countries. And I don't want people from Germany telling me I don't know shit, but it's just easier to consolidate across Europe, because you could, as Interhome did, get properties in the most desirable locations, and you could book those through a place that took the responsibility and had the mandate. This is an Interhome property. So that's something that's one of the reasons we came to meet you in Zurich that day, is that you were doing something nobody else was doing in the United States, and that was a pan-country vacation rental country. That hasn't happened in the U.S., and people have attempted to do it. And I always, what I liked about when I joined Turnkey's board, we had a plan that was going to be technology driven and in market driven. So the marketers in those markets would be totally in charge of their markets. It was my personal view, and I feel it's still my personal view, that you cannot own the vacation rental property manager who's local. You can control his brand. I think that's going to be a good thing long term. And and my model was always, if you want to grow a brand across the United States, it's going to have to be done as a franchise model, was my view. And that meant because the people who are closest to that bed need to make sure the sheets are on right. And they need to be able to do what they do best, which is optimize the guest experience and let someone else do what is hard and expensive, and that is to put those heads in the beds. So a franchise is perfectly well suited to do that. And I think that that's where, in my view, Vacasa got it wrong. And when Turnkey merged with Vacasa, I thought it was a horrible idea. And I made myself clear about that. And I did not ask to stay on the board, and I did not get asked to stay on the board because I thought it was a really, really bad idea to try to actually own those endpoint distributors. So what is the industry getting right now? I think a move to franchise is good. There are lots of room for franchises because the other thing a franchise can do is they can have a bucket. And they can fire people who are outside the bucket. So if the people I'm trying to attract are Marriott Courtyard, I cannot take a Ritz-Carlton for $9,000 a night. I can not take a Oyo Hotel for $49 a night. I can stay in my lane, and I fire the people, and I seek supply and fire the people who won't stay in that bucket when they fall out of the bucket. So if you have the experience that I had this last 4 days, and I stayed in a vacation rental that I've stayed in before, my wife and I go to my family goes to South Padre Island every year, has for 45 years. Every year we go. And we usually stay in one place because we like this place. Not going to go again because the property manager is not insisting that owner keep that property up. That owner, that they haven't done anything to that property in years. They need to fire that owner. They need to say, I can't represent you anymore because you are hurting my brand. And my brand is what keeps you making money. You're not going to get to ride on my brand and make money without investing in your property. So franchises are going to let people do that. And there's lots of room for franchises. Just look in the hotel industry and you can see it. I believe that's going to be coming in the United States. I hope it goes fast because you can get a lot more book direct if you have inventory in 100 cities than if you have inventory in one. That's the general property manager problem, is that if you only operate in Boca Raton, Florida, it's hard to establish a nationwide brand. It's hard to get book direct. But if you're part of a team that has book direct as its first goal as marketing, and that has reach, you have a possibility. So franchising is good. I think that's what we should see more of. But the thing that comes with every brand is policing that brand. And I think it's my opinion, property managers are doing a shitty job of policing their brand. They are letting properties stay on their site and they are renting them to people who are paying top dollar. And those properties are substandard. When you can't get hot water to the master bedroom in a vacation rental, you have a problem. So that's something you need to understand, and you can't rely on the fact that I'm going to give you a $50 credit. No, you're going to lose me forever because you didn't police your brand. $50 credit's not going to help. So I think that's one of the things that property managers have got to understand, that what you sell is important. And you're not keeping it up very well if you aren't policing your brand.
Yeah, you speak from my heart in many aspects, and especially the franchising model, which is something I spoke a lot publicly about lately as well, looking at what's happening in the United States. And that franchise model, just by the nature of our industry being close to that bed, it remains hyper local. It remains hyper fragmented. We want to do hospitality. We'll leave the technology and the marketing to someone else, and we deliver good guest experience. I think franchise is at the end the ultimate solution for that. And we're seeing definitely a lot of movements also in Europe and also in Latin America and even in Australia, that these franchises are happening. And the model still needs to be refined. What is centralized versus what is decentralized and all that stuff. But we need to work through that.
It's really just got started. I think one of the other things that these property managers are going to need to do is they are going to need to take advantage. In my view, they do a little bit of it, and they're just not doing it very well. They need to start selling from the minute you have booked that vacation rental with them, that short-term rental. They need to start selling you other stuff, right? They need to be, and some of them are beginning to get this, right? Because I'm going to the beach, I'm going to need a lot of stuff. But you've got to package well, and that takes skill. And it takes a community of providers that you're packaging that are willing to and able to share revenue with you. So if you sell something, I'll give you an example of a very bad packaging. Because I go to Padre every year, I know what things cost. So I got from my professional manager, I got an invitation that says, we are giving you a $170 credit with beach equipment for your stay. And I said, that's great. So I go online and I start trying to buy their beach equipment. This is in a market where an umbrella costs $30 a day and 2 chairs cost $5 each. Okay. So $40 a day, you can get an umbrella at the beach, set up, taken down. It's been that way for years. It's great. There are providers all over the island do that. So I thought, well, that's great. That'll pay for the umbrellas for 3 days. No, their umbrella charge that they wanted was $490, of which I was going to get a $170 credit. I got that done for $200 for the full stay I was there just by calling another company to come put it up. When I mentioned this to the property manager, that there was no value created by all the work he's done to market this company, to put them in touch with me, you didn't create any value. That's why you didn't make a sale. You need to work on these packages. So classes that we could give in this industry of how do you package is pretty critical, because these guys clearly don't know how to package.
Yeah, absolutely. And now with the new commission models and what's going to hit us on more margin compression, that's exactly where people need to go to create additional revenues and additional profits. But obviously, that's not the way to make your guests angry and think that they're being pulled over the table, because that just doesn't work that way. And I think they still need to fine tune that. But packaging has been an issue for a very long time, and people tried. And, getting that to a customer was challenging, first through technology. How do you upsell? And then how do you package properly with a proper supplier that the services that you sell are actually working as well, and you're not being seen as ripping off your guests. I mean, then it goes absolutely into the wrong way. We need to be very careful here at time, because you and I could talk for hours and we have so many other topics to cover. But one thing I want to quickly come back to, and that's technology piece of it. And I would love to have your opinion. I mean, Vacasa, I had Cliff Johnson conversation to talk about, what is tech enabled versus today, turnkey. There was this incredible term in 1718 when we're providing consulting to private equities to acquire Wyndham Vacation Rental. And we had boardroom discussions where everybody talked about these tech-enabled property management companies, and then turnkey. Is it software as a service or service as a software? Because at the end of the day, we're in the human business. We're organizing cleaning and maintenance if we're a full service property management company. Where do you see that, and how is that evolving now? This tech-enabled proprietary technology versus what is out there. Where is the future heading in the professional management side of it?
Well, I think that great technology is not really required in the vacation rental industry. You need to have people who are always looking teams of people who are always looking to make individual pieces of technology to work better for you. That's important. But at the end of the day, a vacation rental management company is not a technology company, and it shouldn't be a technology company. It should do what companies have done since in my entire career. You mentioned Accenture, which when I started, it was still Andersen Consulting.
Yes.
That's how old I am, But the fact of the matter is that the companies that tried the industry. Let me try again. It has always been true that people think that my business is unique, and therefore I have to code something that works for my business. And Andersen Consulting made its money and became Accenture by the fact of saying, no, we're just going to find you the best software packages. And those best software packages, we're going to knit together to create a thing that lets you manage your company more efficiently with fewer people all along the way of management, so that you can spend your money where you need to be spending it, which is in marketing and product. That's where you need to be able to get that's where you make money. It's marketing and product, not on can you process an order a nanosecond faster than somebody else, and can you get the revenue all the way through to the cash flow. Can you do that? That can all be done. So I think the reliance on software is great. When we started this business, we bought the two leading software companies, and people asked me why I did that. I did it because they were both going to go out of business. And if they went out of business, all of our managers were screwed because they were not sustainable businesses under any stretch of the imagination. So, but they were useful to those property managers, and they had to be used. So I love and I cheer the development of software. I do think that software companies have to understand as well, this is not a bottomless pit. You are going to have to price your software in a way that is manageable by professional managers. You also have to understand for professional managers that changing software is not easy. It is a complete turnover of everything they've had to do. And they just can't do that. So you need to have the responsibility of if one of your competitors is doing something better than you need to figure out how to do it better, and you need to figure out the path to get there. You can't just say, throw it all away. So let the software people develop software. Information, AI, I think is going to be a very critical thing. I wish that AI can come faster for these property managers, because as soon as you can get AI that can comb the universe of publicly available information and answer questions for a property manager, that's good. What does that mean the property manager needs to do? He needs to find the woman who can ask the right questions so that she can get the right answers, right? He needs to find the man that can define that brand in a way that that woman can ask the right questions. You need to form that team that is saying, what do we need to know in order to run our business better? And it isn't, can we get something that can distribute to 15 different platforms? That should just be given. That should be table stakes. You shouldn't take a platform that can't let you distribute anywhere you want to. And if you can't distribute on something, you need to call your professional property manager software company and say, you need to be able to do that by Thursday. Because I want to distribute on that, because that's important to me. Not, we'll get around to it. No, your job is to make me seamlessly distributable. It is not to say I can't get to that until 3 years from now. That is something that software needs to be software, and their customer is the property manager who needs information now, and distribution now. Other platforms that are coming up that are going to come out, and if you can't use them, if you can't distribute on someone, you are limiting your knowledge as to whether that's going to work for you. Software, that's the software companies.
Absolutely.
Challenge.
Absolutely. And I'm sure many software companies are going to listen to your quotes here as wrapping this up. And I could not agree with you more also in relation to AI. That's definitely going to be a significant game changer, not just in relation to software, but also in relation to booking and search. And that's going to change the way we get in our bookings in the future as well. As a final question, or two questions combined, what is getting better at the short-term rental industry, and what does Carl Shepard's blood still make boil in this industry?
What's getting better is it is easier, increasingly easier to book and transact and to find. But the curse of that is it's better because there are dominant OTAs, and now that you're going to have, I don't know if Chesky is blowing smoke up our butts or what, but if he starts taking hotels and he truly becomes an OTA, then he is going to be competing against larger OTAs that are better at that right now. That is a big hill to climb. But it also means that's an opportunity for people who really want to make the vacation rental industry, the short-term industry, more profitable. So I think that's something that is I think we'll see the emergence of more platforms, and we're already beginning to see that. And I hope you do have those guests on, because they need support, especially from professionals. Now, professionals still need to do their job, and that is get rid of the shitty inventory, or get rid of the inventory that you really can't book effectively, and have the best stuff. But those two things go together. What makes my blood boil? It makes my blood boil to walk into a professionally managed property marketed by that I found and I recognize, and I go in that name, and the place is not very nice. Because I still remember the early days of this industry. And this is something, Simon, I wish that AJL might do a study on. But when we did a study, professional managers asked us and said, we do this so much better than the owners. Why don't you lead with us? And I said, okay, let's ask our travelers. And at that time, this was about 2011, we asked our travelers, what do you prefer? A professionally managed property or an owner-managed property? And it's important to know that 50% didn't know the difference, and therefore they had no preference. That was not exactly 50, but a good number of people, around half of them, did not know what a professional. That concept was not something they thought about. They just thought about the house. Of the people who expressed a preference, 89% expressed a preference for owner-managed properties. Why? They were nicer. They are, I used to say when I was on the stick and going to Goldman Sachs conferences and touting HomeAway, they know that when mama's not happy, nobody's happy. And mama has a vacation home, and it's going to be nice. Now, and she's going to make sure that the lamp works, and she's going to be pissed off if her bedspread got stained, and she's going to do stuff that keeps that house where she wants her family to be, right? And I know that sounds sexist to a degree, but there was a personal nature of that. Property managers don't have that reputation. Property managers right now have the reputation of it's a cookie cutter, and it's getting more so. You and I are both on LinkedIn. Someone posted the other day that he just opened his, 60th house. He put pictures of it up, and it looked like the other 59 properties. Well, that's great if you're a hotel. But if you're what makes my blood boil is there's no uniqueness anymore in vacation rental. That I used to go in and say, this is just incredible. It's okay. I paid, $8,000 for this for the week. It's okay, but it's not unique. It's not something that I look forward to. So I think that the thing that makes my blood boil is not maintaining those properties. And because every time you have an experience, I'm an experienced vacation rental owner. I'm always going to go that way when I've got my family with me. Dirty little secret, now that it's just me, Suzanne, and Jack that travel the most, we didn't stay in a single vacation rental on several of our trips. We only stayed in hotels, and we stayed for 3 and 4 and 5 days because I just didn't want to go through the hassle with the 3 of us when we're going to eat out every meal anyway. It's just, I only stay in vacation rentals now when I have my entire family of all 8 of us. We stay in a vacation rental. There's no question. But if it's not great, it makes even me sad. And I think that experience, when you get a user and they have a bad experience, you've just poisoned that person for the industry, not just for your brand. And that responsibility is not shared throughout all of our now 6 or 7 million listings that we have across all of the platforms. Some people just don't care.
Yeah.
That's going to be a problem for us.
I think you just well crystallized the overall challenge. Reviews for single units are always higher than working for a property management company with 100 units. That remains one of the single biggest challenges within our industry. How do you deliver consistent experience and good products when it's more than 1 and is 100 or 200? And I think that's definitely something we need to work on. In summary, get rid of your shitty inventory and focus on the quality of your inventory. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a great pleasure to have Carl Shepard with me today on STR Global Unlocked. And we're looking forward to a lot more interesting episodes. Carl, thank you so much for your time.
Take care.
Thank you. That was STR Global Unlocked, where we say what others won't. If you got value from today's episode, send it to someone who is still playing it safe. Follow the show and get more global insight at ajlatelier.com. The globally recognized STR consultancy I founded and that proudly brings to you this show. More bold conversations are on the way, so stay tuned.